Rick was born in St. John in 1946 in January, and he was the oldest of 4 children in his family. Francis and Bernice Thomas were his parents, and he had 2 brothers and 1 sister. They lived their first 5 years in Grand Manan and moved from there and to St. John area and lived 2 or 3 places around St. John for the next 12 or so years. So a lot of his growing up was in St. John. One summer while he was living with his grandparents in Canso, he went to Vacation Bible School there, and he came to know the Lord. He was 9 years old, came to know the Lord then, and was very, very influenced by his grandfather, particularly in his spiritual life. His decision to go to UBBTS came after quitting high school in the first week or 2 of grade 11 and going to work for a jewelry store in St. John. And during that year, he felt God calling him into ministry. Imagine his surprise when he found out that to be a pastor, he needed to not only finish high school, but he had many, many years of university to get through. I think that he didn't expect that. His grandparents encouraged him to go to UBBTS because he could finish his high school there and as well start on his theological training, and he was really keen to do that. So that really sorted out both things for him. He was 2 years finishing high school there and then did grade 13 there as well. Rick's time at UBBTS was really wonderful. He talks about that with such joy. It gave him a whole new family, actually, when he was there. Stuart Murray was principal there at the time, and he was very, very influential in Rick's life. He encouraged him to think deeply about things and to do his best always for the Lord. And I think that Rick felt very, very looked after by Stuart Murray at that time, yeah. UBBTS changed him from a boy who had quit school to a man who had a vision for God's plan for his life and the skills and the determination to follow through with that. So very, very important in his life. Unfortunately, neither Rick or his family had resources to help him go to university. And so I guess enter Lena Guinta. Lena is Frank Guinta's mother. And when she heard that Rick had a call to ministry but had no funds to do that, she said, and Frank has told me this over and over, she said, "Frankie, you tell Ricky to pack his bags and come to Acadia, and we will look after him. He can stay with us." Anyway, that's what they did. Lena looked after him, and Frank's family looked after him. Little did they know what a huge impact that would have on Rick's life. You know, Lena couldn't have known that he would be able to finish his BA, do his Master of Divinity, and eventually Doctor of Ministry at Acadia. And it's funny, the small things that we think are small that we do for other people often end up being this huge, huge impact. And that's what the Guintas were for Rick. We were blessed with 4 sons, Bruce, Michael, Calvin, and Daniel. And our years in ministry were busy ones. We had a fairly large family for that time, and after graduating with his MDiv from Acadia, Rick went back to ABC, I guess, then, and taught for 3 years. He also pastored at that same time churches in Albert County, Weldon and Salem. They were busy years there, and our family was young. After leaving ABC, felt called to pastoral ministry, so we went to Browns Flat, and these ministries in churches were fairly long ones, usually 7 to 9 years. First in Browns Flat, then in Lincoln, and then in Petitcodiac. Yeah, we made many, many friends in those churches, and he loved pastoral work. In his older years, he really, really missed it. During his 12 years at Steve's Mountain, his last pastorate, he was also Baptist chaplain at the Moncton Hospital and the George Dumont Hospital. And as well, he was president of convention in 1999-2000. So all of these things have their background in UBBTS. Rick's faith remained steadfast through many, many challenges, many different kinds of challenges. And as we got older and looked back on those challenges, we realized that God had used those things in our lives to change us. And those are changes that would have been made in no other way but that. And so, though I was not grateful for those difficulties or challenges, nor was he, we can be grateful looking back on them because God was using them to make us what he wanted us to be. I saw Rick evolve from a rather young, brash, opinionated man to a mature man, wise, gentle, with a great love for his Lord and for his people. In all of that, God has made a way for us. Crandall University provided him also with an outlet to share his significant knowledge and experience with students, and he was really invigorated by teaching here and with his interaction with students and with faculty as well. His most important legacy resides in the people with whom he interacted over his life. His family, his friends, his congregational folk, the people who were thirsty for biblical teaching, people who were hurting, people who were poor, people who are lost. His greatest gift is in them.
Rick Thomas was my friend for over 20 years, and we had met here at Crandall before that while he taught during, I think it was Steve Dempster's research leave or sabbatical. And he was down the hall, so we would chat. I remember one particular December leading into our Christmas break when we spoke very frankly about some of the challenges in our families and some of the joys that come with the great wives that God had seen fit to bring into our lives. And it began there. And then that spring, I called Rick and Sheila to see if they would like to go to a small group that Kathy, my wife, Kathy and I were sponsoring at our house, and they came. And it was the beginning of a long and wonderful relationship, certainly for me. Rick made sure that he had this big pastoral prayer for all of us and for our children and for the people that we loved. And Rick was a great teacher to me and mentor in a way that no one else has ever been in my life. And during the time I was very ill, Rick was, because sometimes words would come out of my mouth that you never heard in Sunday school, and Rick was totally fine with that. He just walked with me during some very difficult and painful times, like a real genuine brother, spoke the truth to me in love, and then sometimes just sat and just shut up, and sometimes just being quiet before people who are having tough times is the best thing you can do. And Rick knew that, and he had a sense of when to read the scriptures, and also during those very difficult times, when to pray. Yeah, Rick Thomas, thanks be to God for you. Thanks be to God for Sheila. Thanks be to God for your patience with me and your forgiving nature.
So I've known Rick probably for 20, 25 years, but known him only really well probably for the last 15. We had been prayer partners, and we met every morning, or not every morning, but every week in the mornings and around 7 o'clock, and we would pray for each other, and there were 2 or 3 others in the group. But I think of Rick, when I think of Rick, I think of 2 words. He was a man of faith, and he was also faithful. And when I say he was a man of faith, he would always show up to pray. And he would pray for his children. He would pray for my children. He would pray for the other gentleman's children. And he would pray, and I always remember the names of his prayer requests. Was Bruce, Calvin, Mike, and Dan, and he had a real heart for them. And they were not just staccato prayers, but oftentimes when Pastor Rick was praying for someone, he would be moved with emotion, and he would cry. And you could see that he really believed in the power of prayer, and he really loved people as well. I know that he and Sheila, the love of his life, would go down and volunteer at St. George's in their soup kitchen or their breakfast program in the morning. And he was always interested in helping the needy. One other thing about Rick that really struck me is he had a passion for Christian education and a passion for theology and its impact on Christian education. And he always had a heart for Crandall. Crandall, back in the day, it was UBBTS, and then it became Atlantic Baptist College, and then Atlantic Baptist University, and then Crandall University. But one thing that Rick wanted to do, one of his relatives was a Guptal, and he established a Guptal lectureship that was to be run every so often, and I was actually on the committee for the Guptal lectureship. And one of the things that I found about Rick, and even in his own work as a pastor, but also as a scholar, he was someone who was really interested in making an impact on the students. And I know that there were pastors that became pastors as the result of his ministry. I knew a number of them. And also that there were people that just, you'd find out later that they came to faith in his classroom. And so he was always interested in praying for the university, praying for the administration, praying for the faculty, so that this university would have a real impact on Christian education and on education in general.
In my last visit with Rick at the Moncton City Hospital just a little while before he passed away, Rick shared with me his academic struggles while he was at UBBTS, his short attention span and the troubles that gave him in terms of his studies, and spoke so highly of the people who surrounded him, the professors and teachers, and he felt it was largely due to their influence that he was admitted to Acadia. But it's so interesting when you think from that challenging start, he went on to receive his bachelor's degree, his master's, and eventually an earned doctorate. Again, he was just such a fine Bible teacher and preacher. Rick was such a great friend to so many. And I think particularly in his last 20, 25 years, he became a tremendous mentor to others who were early in ministry or feeling a call to ministry, and his pastoral ability with people, partially reflected in his time in serving in chaplaincy at the hospital. He had a profound impact on so many. He was a great friend, and I miss him.
He made friends that have stayed friends his whole life, and a couple of those are Frank and Donna Guinta, who is also being honored tonight. He and Rick were very, very good friends, and it just seems really quite wonderful that these two men are being honored at the same event. When I heard that Rick would be given this award, I was surprised, I guess, and really pleased. I think that this would have been very, very meaningful for him. And so I'm happy to accept it on his behalf.
Sheila, we're so pleased to have the opportunity to recognize and honor Rick tonight, and I'm pleased that you're here to accept this award on his behalf. I remember, I think, Sheila, the first time I met you and Rick, I was a student serving as Norman Woodworth's assistant at the Oromocto Baptist Church, and Rick was pastoring nearby in Lincoln, and we would do some joint services and so on in the evenings, and I remember Rick quite well from those days as somebody who deeply loved the Scriptures and loved explaining it to people, helping them understand how the truths of God's Word applied to their life day by day. Rick had a profound connection with Crandall University over the years. When he was young, he was teaching here, and then when he came back at the end of his vocational ministry, again had another season of teaching here. I know Rick was a person who focused on preparing well for his courses and challenging the students and encouraging them to think about the material he was presenting and how it would make a difference for them if they truly understood it and applied it in their own life setting. So again, we're just so pleased to be able to recognize Rick in this way, and we're grateful for his many years of service to Christian ministry, his service to the people of Atlantic Canada, his deep love for the Word, and his love for the students at Crandall University. So thank you on our behalf for receiving this on his behalf.
Through the school has changed a great deal over the years, and through its many forms and its many names, Rick has stayed constant in his belief in its mission and in being supportive of the school here. Thank you so much for honoring him in this way.